Seems there's more trouble in the city of Joburg. Political party COPE has axed its only Joburg council member, Colleen Makhubele, who also, of course, was the speaker of the city. Over the weekend, Makhubele announced that COPE had joined an alliance of smaller parties ahead of next year's elections. Well, COPE has told us this evening on this channel that no, in fact, they have not joined that alliance. So what does this mean for the city and for the residents of the city? And I'm joined now by the DA caucus leader in Johannesburg, Belinda Kayser-Echeozonjoku. Belinda, thank you so much for your time. So when I spoke to the COPE spokesperson earlier, he basically said that Colleen Makhubele had pretty much axed herself by announcing something that hadn't been approved by COPE. We know that COPE has had a lot of ups and downs in terms of its leadership. So let's look at it this way. Has the Joburg City Council had receipt of her no longer being a COPE member? Have you guys been sort of pulled into the loop on what exactly is happening with the Speaker of Johannesburg?
Good evening, Sally, and good evening to the viewers. Unfortunately, we all saw it on the news today. We saw over the weekend, obviously, that councillor or former councillor Colleen Makhubele has obviously started this new political party, which we were under the impression that it was with COPE's blessing, and obviously subsequently today we found out that it was not the case. It brings more instability, and in our view as the DA, it strengthens our resolve for the council to be dissolved. Unfortunately, we are not sure whether this has been received by the IEC yet. None of us political parties have been called into any meeting yet, so we have yet to hear whether this has been received by either the city manager, obviously because of the leave for appeal, or the IEC.
All right, so as councillors, you're pretty much in the dark as we are. Let's say it is a thing, because COPE seems to think that she's no longer a member. What actually is the process? If a speaker is axed for whatever reason, an election is held, I understand. How soon would that happen? What would the process entail?
Okay, normally an election would have to be held, but obviously we need to be informed by the city manager that there's a vacancy, that political party had obviously, the IEC had then informed that that political party has declared a vacancy, and we would then be informed. And obviously a new council sitting will have to be called to then elect a speaker. But as I said, we don't believe as the DA that calling a council sitting to elect a speaker is going to solve the problems of Johannesburg, because even the people that are part of the governing coalition that Councillor Makhubele was part of, were part of these irregular decisions that she had made while she was Speaker of Council. So as it is at this point, until we get formal notification, she is still the Speaker of Council until we get obviously that formal notification.
Now, last week we spoke and our conversation was interrupted because it was a bad line, but I know that the DA wants, as you've mentioned, for the City Council of Johannesburg to be dissolved. This was, of course, over the fact that the courts agreed with you that City Manager of Joburg, Floyd Brink, was irregularly and illegally appointed. Now, that matter obviously is in limbo because he's applying to appeal that decision. How would you go about getting council dissolved? What do you have to, I mean, I would imagine it's a motion, but then it would have to be voted on. Is that right?
Correct. What we had done, in fact, I had reworked my motion, the DA's motion yesterday, because I'm the proposer on behalf of the DA caucus, and the seconder is obviously our Chief Whip Councillor Leah Knott. We would be tabling it at the programming committee. Now with Makhubele not being Speaker or being Speaker, being in limbo, we've yet to see whether that will now be tabled, but it was due to be tabled on the 17th of November, which obviously would be after the 2 years that council, the anniversary of council being constituted. What would then happen is that we would table that motion, people will vote, we'll table the motion, and the Speaker would then call a sitting for that purpose. And then we would need 2/3 of council to vote for the dissolution of council. That is what the process would normally be.
And very quickly, you mentioned there'll be a meeting potentially on the 17th of November. Does council go into recess over the festive season? And if so, is it highly unlikely, if you need a new speaker, that you'll elect one this year?
Well, in a situation where there is no speaker, the city manager can call a meeting. All political parties can also petition for a meeting to be called. In fact, remember this situation had previously happened where there was no council before the 2021 elections, where the city manager, in fact, had called the meeting where the councillors were sworn in. So it can be called. There can be a special sitting for that purpose. There can also be a special sitting for any other matters that need to be discussed, which also includes the dissolution of council, which I believe can be done as well. But for this purpose, the city manager can call a council sitting. Just to add, Sally, we believe that Councillor Makhubele is running away from accountability and stalling what we believe she would have been held accountable for this appeal that is currently taking place. So she's basically throwing everybody else who made these decisions with her, who allowed these things to come in.